this week I have two fantastic guests, people who I've been lucky enough to speak to before, and I'm really glad to have them back here. First, I have Graceina Samosir. She is an artist who graduated in 2018. She resides in Canada and likes to experiment with art and also does art instruction. She's a fantastic person. I really enjoyed my first conversation with her. I'm excited to have her on the show today. And second, I have John Mahoney. He is an illustrator and a filmmaker living in LA. He worked at Disney as a concept artist and then moved into the independent film world, and he's currently launching his own project, which we'll speak more about. Another fantastic person, such a generous guest, and I am thrilled to have both of you on the show. So welcome to the show, both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Humbled to be here.
Oh, lovely.
And with John. I've been a fan of your work online.
It is. It's always amazing to see the things that you post, John. I do love your style and the work that you've been sharing at the moment. So as you've seen from the episode that you've had on my podcast, I'll be sharing lots of your amazing artwork because it's always a joy to pepper throughout the episode. And the same with Graceina's artwork. I just love both of your styles. I think they're really, I don't know, they're just kind of mesmerizing because of the line work and the ability to have that freedom to express kind of texture and form with a bit more of a professional kind of, what do you call it? Application, I'd say, of the nib. Yeah. It's really nice.
You're able to like synthesize and basically describe what I do better than I can. I appreciate that from the first conversation.
I appreciate that. That's really kind. But yeah, sorry, go on, John.
I was going to say, I'm really excited because I think Grace is my favorite artist on Instagram. So I'm excited to talk to you about some of your ideas and, figure out how you became who you are. It's pretty exciting to me. So
yeah, I am a bit astounded. You said one of your favorite artists on Instagram. Why is that? What stands out?
I don't know about one of my favorites. I think you are my favorite. But no, I think that generally on Instagram people tend to be influenced by pop art, and it's very doesn't have a sense of depth to it or fine art that your work has. And I know from my personal point of view that the reason my work isn't better is because I'm influenced by a lot of more cheesy type of artwork, cartoons and stuff like that that I grew up with. But it seems like your work isn't influenced by that type of stuff. It seems to be more influenced by really great art, I assume. So I'm a little bit slightly envious, just a pinch.
It's mutual. The artists that I respect and admire, I have a tinge of envy as well. I think that's normal.
Yeah, totally. So, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to stop the flow. What were you going to?
I was going to say, yeah, so I looked up your Instagram. I looked at all the work that you posted, and I realized, oh, well, you've probably done more work than the average 50 or 60-year-old artist. You've done so much drawing that makes sense that your work would get better and better. And I was going to ask you, what was the motivation to do as much drawing as you've done? I assume you're relatively young. You look very young.
I was born in 93.
Oh my God. That's awesome.
So if I'm not mistaken, you're asking why am I motivated to keep drawing?
Or to do as much drawing as you've done. You seem to do a lot more drawing than even the average good artist. So I was wondering, do you have some kind of a drive that keeps you drawing as much as you do?
I guess, yeah, I do. It's become a habit for me. So it started off as something that I had to build, like a discipline. It basically started in university or high school rather. I just had that desire to I don't want to sound cheesy. You mentioned cartoon references, so like be the very best. I
Sure.
love Pokemon, so it was what drove me, and yeah, like ever since high school, 12th grade, and then university, it just sort of became something that I can't part with. So I have to do it, if not every day, every other day, just as a form of um I don't even want to say catharsis, but I guess it is catharsis. Like I just need to create marks to kind of um I don't know. I don't know. I just it's become a habit, I guess. It's become a way of trying to understand my surroundings, trying to unravel the way I think. And I think that's it. There's nothing super grand. It's
Mm-hmm.
just become like a habit, I guess. Not to sound redundant, but yeah.
That's great. Now, did you have like a person who inspired you at a certain age, or a certain hero that you wanted to emulate? Like, what was the catalyst that got you kind of going at in high school?
Yeah, so in university, I was fortunate enough to have been taught and instructed by Nicolas Uribe. And up to now, I look up to him so much. And I think I've drawn a lot of um, the way he approaches drawing and painting is how I do it also to a degree. Like I've
Mhm.
copied his work so much when I was in his class. And what I realized was that I love painting. I love painters and a lot of and sculptors as well. I see that you do that as well. And what I've realized is those that create great paintings or paintings that resonate with me, paintings that are just there's depth to them. Also sculptures, they have a really strong foundation in drawing and
Mm-hmm.
the fundamentals of it. And so maybe without even realizing it, I um, internalize the importance of drawing. And so I decided that, um, yeah, like to be able to reach like Nicolas's level, I had to master drawing. And that was it. Because he is a phenomenal draftsperson. He can also sculpt. And yeah, he has that strong foundation.
That's great. So
Yeah.
he was your teacher, I assume. So, what did he become also your mentor? Was it like, communicating conflict? How am I doing?
Yeah.
And what can I do
Yeah.
to get better? Yeah,
Yeah, he was very dope, a very relaxed, like chill person and very approachable, very accessible and very humble as well. So that just like drew me into his approach and his practice. Um but yeah, I don't think he liked the idea of him being a person's mentor. I think that's a lot of pressure. But yeah, I don't even tell him that because I know he would find that cheesy or he would have found that cheesy back then. So yeah, but yeah, I did see him as a mentor. Um, and also his business model. I find that I kind of am studying the way he monetizes his art and the way he kind of streamlines his art. So he's a big influence for sure.
that's great. That's awesome.
What
What
about
about
you?
same thing for you, John?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I had a mentor who was incredible. His name was Dave Pazalacqua, and he actually I heard won a he was in the Guinness Book of World Records for the most book covers ever done by an illustrator, which is over 2,000 book covers. And he worked on design for like Lawrence of Arabia and Mad Max and Dr. Zhivago. So he was an incredible mentor for me, and I would follow him around like a lost puppy, you know. Um, we were in illustration class. During lunch, I would still sit there and listen to his stories, and then I ended up studying with him in Florida. You know, he took a bunch of people out there. So, and he took us to the museums, the Museum of Natural History and the Metropolitan, and showed us the importance of culture and the history of art. But I always had this yearning to also go off and do my own thing, you know, which is Star Wars and robots and comic books, all the stuff he hated. So at a certain point, I think I was in the Museum of Natural History, and I'm drawing R2D2. And he comes over and he shakes his head, like, I'm never going to change you. And at that point, I made the decision to leave his class and move and go to California and try to get into filmmaking, which he thought was a great idea. Maybe he had aspirations for me being a better artist, you know, than I am, like a much higher level. But it was in my blood, you know, and I thought that after a while, maybe it might be a good idea to kind of give up on the art thing and focus on the film thing, because that's the thing I'm much more passionate about, is becoming a great filmmaker. So yeah, it's that type of thing. And I've noticed too, some of my students that were in the class that did not have the comic book influence and the animation influence were stronger artists. And I was always a little bit perplexed by that. And I realized if you surround yourself with great art, you will rise up. And if you surround yourself with mediocre art, you're going to hang out in the mediocre world, you know? So I kind of like try to remind myself of that as much as I can, especially with my young students. I'll be like, oh yeah, you know, follow your passions. But if you want to be a better artist, you look at the great artists of the past and acknowledge them. So so I'm kind of like a mixture of fine art and cheese. Just like, it's like probably 50-50, you know. It's a lot of cheesy stuff that I don't know.
I don't think it's cheesy at all.
No,
But
I always find it a grungy sci-fi kind of influence
yeah,
that you have mixed with the fine art, which I think is really nice. It's like a
Oh
sweet.
yeah, I know. Yeah, but there are artists out there that have a much higher level of sophistication in their artwork, and also I feel like for myself to move away from the only way to get better, in other words, is to let go of more of the cheesy stuff and embrace the masters, you know. So
that's
and yeah.
kind of on the opposite journey. I'm trying to become more commercial. But you said you teach. What do you teach?
I teach pretty much everything. In the past, I've taught everything from creative writing to figure drawing to illustration, sculpture, ZBrush, character design, storyboarding, production design. But right now, I'm just focused on ZBrush. I'm teaching ZBrush and concept design at USC, which is more basically like just having fun and just coming up with cool stuff. So, so yeah, I think I've learned a lot of different areas, and I think that's really a good thing, you know, to have your foot in all these different places. But the one thing I want to be good at is film directing, you know, and I think the thing that it's easier to just sit down and focus on a sculpture because it's right in front of you and you know if it's getting better or worse. So lately I've been trying to restrict my sculpting to focus on, you know, what I really want to get better at.
And why is that? Why film directing specifically?
Because it's the coolest thing ever. Yeah. But it's something that I love Star Wars and all that long before drawing. And whenever I did drawings, ever since I was a kid, it was an indication of what the drawing would be someday. So it was never the drawing. It was never it was never the art, it was what the art was describing, you know? And so the ultimate is to have a character in a costume performing and alive and creating emotion and stuff like that. So yeah, so if someone said, well, if you could never draw again, you could never touch clay again, but we'll let you be a director, I would say yes in a heartbeat. I would give it all up in a flash. So then that's something too I always ask my students is like, well, what do you really want to do? If a genie came out of the sky and said, give you your wish, what would it be? And then whatever they say, that's it. Well, maybe that's the direction you should go in, you know.
Wow.
You're
That's really-
confirming. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I just thought for me that always, it's a kind of a scary realization that happens, to think about trading off a lot of the things that you find fun, like drawing and inking and, you know, all the different kind of, you know, painting and every kind of aspect of art that you explore, and to kind of let that go for something that, you know, deep down is something you would trade for all of that fun and practice. Did you have anything which dawned on you, Graceina, when he said that? Because I did. What would the
Yeah.
thing be for you?
Well, what stood out for me was how he listed all these things that he has mastered or he has taught. And it just confirmed this idea, this nudge in me that skill stacking is so important, because film directing is an art. The fact that you're so like you're not attached to just like drawing or illustration, and then you can move to film directing, that shows a level of mastery and a level of expertise that you can transfer what you know from here to there. And so that dawned on me, like how you have a stack of scarce skills, and that's awesome. That's what I'm in the process of kind of building that up as well. Because I feel a bit restricted with mine. I think I mentioned, you said no, but I do want to venture into the commercial side as well, because when I was in university, I took, so there were 3 concentrations. There were audiovisual, and then graphic arts, and then fine arts. So I was teetering between fine arts and graphic arts. And I think what you guys are, the way you guys were describing my art kind of confirms that. Yeah, sorry, I kind of stuttered. So, but that was a struggle, because I didn't want to just be one. And I had a professor who said, you're more of a fine artist, like, because I start to take more graphic classes and illustration and bookmaking and comics and stuff like that, and character design. And then one of my professors said, you're more of a fine artist. And that kind of, I don't know, that kind of hurt my ego, because I thought, what do I do after? Like, if you're a fine art, what are my prospects if after I graduate and I'm a fine artist? I felt like it was, I don't know, like it kind of reduced me to that. And so right now I'm trying to break free from that, and I'm trying to learn or get back to like character design and storyboarding. So I have a lot of questions about that.
You see, I find it really interesting the way you describe that, because I graduated from a fine art course about a year ago. It was at the end of the month. It would be about a year since I graduated. And fine art was quite a specific kind of genre which they were trying to teach. And it was very, I don't know how to explain it now. It's kind of like they were trying to push unorthodox practices, really. Whereas in truth, fine art is a really wide spectrum of anything. So it could be storyboard arts presented as fine art. And it's usually, the way that it's explained is that fine art is simply trying to cover several themes and concepts, so that when it's presented to the viewing public, it's going to be a layered experience which will be provocative on some level. And that's its goal, really, is to try and provoke people to experience an emotion and to stir up a thought and a conversation, where illustration will be a concept and an appreciation and a real disciplined skill. And fine art can be something which is removed from all of that, or it can be that, but it will be presented in a way where it does something a little bit different because of, and I'm not saying better or more, I'm just saying it has to, there's a real overlap between illustration and fine art at some level. And I've found that people struggle to say, this is where illustration ends and this is where fine art begins, because it's a very blurred line. And it's only because the school that I went to was so specific about what they wanted you to do, which I pushed back against, because I kind of rejected that notion, because I knew that fine art was broader than they were delivering it. But that's why they wouldn't really embrace the creativity of a lot of the students that would go towards comic books and filmmaking, and all of that is encompassed in fine art, depending on how you present it and how you want to exhibit your work. So it's kind of funny to me to go, being described as a fine artist made you feel reduced to a specific title, which I can understand, but it's funny because to me, I've heard people say to me, what are you doing on a fine art course? You're an illustrator, is what they say to me. And I think like, well, I'm not just an illustrator. I could do fine art as well. I mean, surely it's a bit of both. It could be anything. It depends on how you package your work or whatever. And I'm not sure how right or wrong that is. But I mean, when you think of fine art, what pops into your head? Do you think of contemporary work? Do you think of non-figurative, or do you think of what is it, the classical stuff?
Yeah, the classical stuff, maybe super hyper conceptual, outdated. Maybe that's what I think, even though I know it's not necessarily true. Yeah, and I want to experiment. I want to combine different genres, like you mentioned, how we can take a fine arts approach to comic book and illustration. So I think that's where I'm at on the spectrum of between fine arts and graphic arts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to mention too, I think some of my favorite artists are commercial artists, but they're also great fine artists, like James Jean. Kent Williams is another one who was my teacher in school, but he's an incredible fine artist, but he also does tons of comic book covers. And then there's Ashley Wood, who's also an incredible fine artist. And
where did you go to school?
I went to Pratt
Okay.
Institute in Brooklyn, in New York, which was, at least from my point of view, was more fine art based, even though I was in the commercial area. I took illustration, graphic design, art direction. But I guess what was held, which people felt was the highest that you can do is the fine art influence. So when I showed my work, fine art people would say, "Oh, you're definitely an illustrator," and the illustration people would say, "Oh, you're definitely a fine artist." And definitely when I was working at Disney, people were scratching your heads, like, "What are you doing here? You're an experimental fine artist. What are you doing here?" I was like, "I don't know. I just kind of backed into it." So I like what you said about, let's say doing a comic book or something like that, but doing it your own way. It's literally just once you take your artwork and put it in panels, you've got a comic book. You throw some word bubbles on it. And if you start doing compositions, you're a storyboard artist. It's as easy as that. The hard part is learning how to draw, and I think you've got that under your belt. So whenever I hear someone say, I want to get into the commercial world, I always feel a little nervous, because it's like, what do you mean by that? Do you want to start doing clean model sheets and turn around to SpongeBob? I'm sure not, but that's the thing that makes me nervous.
Fair, but I want to try at least once. I think it's options that I want. I want to try, experience how it is.
Absolutely.
I suppose the commercial world is going to be quite broad as well, so that could mean several things, because it makes me think of literal advertisements, on television. and there's some art on there which is really nice, but I kind of have a kind of inbuilt rejection of commercialism because I'm not much of a consumer. So I really reject a lot of the, you know, artistry being packaged as consumerism, which is just something which I think I struggle with sometimes. But at the same time, it does make an advert more palatable and easier to pay attention to if it's visually masterful, you know, and that's seldom happens. A lot of the time I'll see things and think, that's filmed wrong. That's really, you know, I'll see that in advertisements. I mean, maybe it's just British adverts, but I see it quite often where I'll think that's really poorly made. And then we become, I don't know, a bit cynical, I suppose, over here and think maybe they're doing that on purpose to make you pay attention to the advert, and then you remember it, and then you'll remember the product, and then it's in your head, and we kind of, you know, become paranoid thinking, is this part of a mechanism to really get us to pay attention, because they're all competing for our attention, really. I was wondering as well, it's something which I found, because you've talked about the practice of drawing and how to improve and being concentrated and focused. And I'm far less experienced than either of you, but I've put in a lot of hours drawing still. And I've found that there are times when I'm really focused on drawing and I come out with something decent. There are other times when I really need to be a lot looser and a lot more, I don't know, less constrained. And I'm just wondering whether either of you have found a real value in being playful in your art practice.
Well, if I guess I can jump in. Yeah, and I think that giving yourself the freedom to express yourself, rather than, oh, I have to draw a certain way because I want to get better, you know, having that freedom. Because what happens is you tend to draw more when you're joyful, you know. So I think allowing that joy to come through. Yeah, for me, I always, from my point of view, as for improving on drawing, it's always, you know, figure drawing is number one, but number two, hands and feet. You'd be able to draw really good hands, especially. Is that's kind of like when I go through someone's portfolio, if they're applying for a school, I just look at the hands. I don't care about anything else. It's like, you know what I mean? So focusing on those specifics, the hardest, not really hardest, but will enable you to get better and better, you know. So anyway,
Yeah.
My
Have
side
you
of
found
it.
that, Graceina? Has it been like, you know, playfulness has helped with your practice, or is it always kind of a really disciplined study, or is there kind of room for both?
There's room for both, but in my case, I had to first be rigid and super structured. And what I find now is that because I have that, I understand the parameters, now I can play around it because I know of the boundaries and the rules. So what I did first, like, it was copying, it's purely copying. I really want to learn how this person draws, how they draw, literally print out, like copy and paste. And then after a while, I got more confident, it got boring. And so I started mixing and matching and meshing, bending all of these different styles, for lack of a better word. And then after, I think I started to break away from just like pencil and paper, and also detaching myself from, it's mental for me, detaching myself from the idea of having to be perfect. And which is why I love mark making, and I love mark making exercises, and kind of having this, like seeing a blank canvas or paper or some kind of service, and not treating it with preciousness, or not treating my art with preciousness, and that sort of freedom. This idea of like nothing is permanent. Even if I finish this, I might rework on this later. And so that it's a sense of like detachment as well. So that married with, you know, different tools, different surfaces, different formats as well as sizes, and also like drawing not just like this, but drawing with the whole arm and drawing large format, and kind of combining all of that made me more playful in my approach.
Mm,
And I hope to grow in that sense of playfulness.
absolutely.
I was going to ask, did you, when you were working with your teacher or your mentor, was that something that he suggested, that you look at other artists and copy them? And if so, did you have a group of other students around you that were kind of doing the same thing, or were you kind of just focused on that more than others?
Yeah, well, me and a few others, they really emphasized collecting references, and they didn't really shame copying other artists, because it's just, for most of us, we just started drawing or pursuing arts like for 1, 2, 3 years, 4 years, right? Like I feel like we can't really put so much pressure in a person having developed this like their own pictorial language within the first 4 years. I've started drawing, I would say it's nearing a decade, since 2000. Yeah, more slightly more than a decade, and only now, and am I starting to feel more confident. So I think it was good that they didn't really force like, oh, you need to have your own language. When you're literally in just your second year or third year of college, we were babies. We just started. We were just exposed to this world, right? So they did encourage that, and yeah.
Well, that's great. That's something that I kind of force my students to do. It's like looking at other artists, and we always have conversations about not feeling guilty about copying, and we learn from copying and things like that. Yeah, I wish I had done that more when I was younger. I think I did a little bit here and there, just stumbling on it, and I would improve, and then I would stop for a couple of years, then I would do it again and improve. But I wish I had done it a lot more consistently. Um, there is a certain pressure, maybe nowadays, at least from the experiences that I've had, the students are so pressured to come up with a style and a way of, a game plan for making a living in your second year. Like you haven't even thought about drawing yet, and you already have to kind of package some type of a style.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm totally against that way of thinking, so it's interesting that what you're talking about is what I kind of preach. I don't practice as much as I should, but I do preach it all the time. So that's interesting. That's great.
Yeah, that's good. When someone asks me, how do I develop my own style? How long have you been drawing? Well, I just started I just started. This is my first class, or I'm a first year, second year. Ask me in like 20 years, and you won't even have to ask me. You'll already know in 20 years. So yeah, I do have some questions, John. Why did you leave Disney?
Well, I did pitch to them an idea of maybe possibly directing a project that was going on at the time, and they're probably like, "What are you, are you nuts? Why would we let you direct of all people?" But I really felt like I needed to. Well, I felt satisfied in the sense that I knew I could satisfy different directors and producers. I felt like, okay, this is the project. I can do something that they like. So I proved that. I didn't need to keep proving that. I really felt like I have my own voice, and I felt like, uh, that was the reason I moved out to Hollywood in the first place, was to become a filmmaker. So to stay there would literally be just making money, which is great. They give you toys and really cool cubicle and art supplies and stuff. So it is a wonderful place, and I made some of my best friends there. And the director, Roger Adlers, who was my boss, I met him at a gallery space, and I had to thank him for giving me my first shot, and I was like crying. But so at that type of thing, it's like, do you choose comfort over what you feel that you could contribute to the world? You know what I'm saying? Also, there is no such thing as comfort anyway, because there's massive layoffs and everything, and so I felt like I needed to focus on that. And the funny thing is, I went to Cal Arts to show my work to a teacher there, because I heard he may have known my teacher, so I was like trying to get some information on that. And he was the one who suggested, his name is Corny Cole. He suggested that I teach. And that was the first time. And then when I started teaching, I realized that I could do my own artwork and not have to pander or focus on whatever the industry wants. I can kind of hide away and just teach and just do my own thing. So that ended up becoming the perfect place. But then that started getting comfortable after a while, so I realized I needed to jump off the ship again, even more scary, and try to do my own film. And then I had to jump off the ship again like a week ago or something, and I said, you got to produce this yourself. And I know people were looking at me like, the first thing I met someone at the Monster Palooza, he asked me, he said, well, have you ever produced anything before? I said, no. He's like, well, what makes you think you can produce it? And I said, well, I've done all these other things. I know my world backwards and forward, and I know how to do something cheaply, so I'm going to produce it. And, I think people can be a little bit offended. It's like, how dare you? It's like, well, I'm sorry. That's what I'm doing, So anyway, that was a long answer to a short question, but.
It's inspiring that, no, you're also confirming something that I've been ruminating on. It's the theme of risk taking and not allowing yourself to be complacent where you are. That's admirable, and that it's rewarding to to break out of your comfort zone once you feel comfortable there.
Yeah, I wanted to ask as well, because you were talking about the doing producing as well, and somebody challenging that. Do you have people around who challenge your ideas, John, that kind of make sure that people who are saying to you, is this right, or I'm not sure this works, and things like that, because that can be an important part of making sure that your vision is being bounced off people in case there's anything that you're not seeing, hasn't been a screw that hasn't been tightened correctly or something. Is there anything like that you've made sure to do?
That's a great question. I don't think so. I think in general people are very nurturing, so all of the naysayers are mostly in your own head. You know what I mean? It's not like people are standing in line to say, Don, don't do this. It might only be one or two people that are, oh, you're crazy, but most people are very supportive. So it's more you're in your own head. Oh, people are going to say you can't do this, or people, what people? Nobody cares what you do and what you don't do. So a lot of it is trying to quiet those voices. But also, in my own mind, I thought, well, you have to hire a producer, or you have to hire a professional producer, because that's what you do to make movies. Yeah, it's like when you work in your sketchbook, you're the producer, you're the director. You know what I'm saying? You don't need someone standing behind you in your sketchbook saying, okay, page 2, you should do that, page 3. And yeah, someone might say, yeah, but this is filmmaking. You can't think of it the same way. Well, why not? Why not? You know what I mean? Literally, why not? People, the cameras that we have in our cell phones nowadays is a million times better than the master filmmakers back in the 1920s and 30s. You know what I mean? So they were able to make masterpieces from a box and a hole and a lens. So there's no excuses anymore. But I think a lot of the stumbling blocks are between our two ears. And once we push them away, it's like, oh yeah, I can produce it. I can direct it. I can do this stuff. It won't be like the Hollywood stuff, but I'm not trying to do that anyway, So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean to say that you need someone to be a naysayer. Sorry, I may have miscommunicated.
Oh, no. It just kind of spurred on that string of thoughts, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. I suppose for me, it's always my older brother is my harshest critic.
Oh, really?
I'm kind of the same for him. He knows that he can trust me to relay anything that I spot, and I'm not trying to pick apart his work. It's just we both do that for each other. And he has far more notes for me, obviously, because I'm in my earlier stages, but it's something which I think can be quite valuable, just in case if I show things, you know, to other family members, they'll be like, "That's brilliant! It's one of the best things I've seen," and you never get that. You've not noticed this, or compositionally you could do that, and sometimes that helps me think I need to push harder and learn more, and consider whether I should be pushing my artwork beyond where I'm initially satisfied, because sometimes I can say, that's all right, I quite like that, and I'll just get used to how it looks. Whereas if I just push a little bit harder, I could reach this separate platform. Does that make sense to you, Graceina? Have you, it seems like you push naturally to this other level as well.
Sometimes I over push, and now I'm trying to leave some space to the imagination. But I feel you. I want to break out of drawing. I want to get back to painting. I'm making excuses like, oh, I don't, my apartment is too small, and my studio is it's too cluttered, like too much stuff. I can't do this, I can't do that, not good lighting. But I think those are excuses, and I think if I can do large format paintings, I can do small. So yeah, I want to push myself in that area.
Yeah,
that's great. I was going to ask you, Grace, do you have like an ultimate goal, or not a goal, but something you would love to do? Like, oh, if someone could grant me a wish, what would that thing be? Like to make a living, or what would you do?
One, I want to experience as many things, not necessarily stay in them, just for the experience and the connections that can blossom from that, like the friendships and relationships. So that's one, just experience as many things. But ultimately, I don't have like, say, a certain accolade or accomplishment that I need to reach. Like I don't need to be exhibited in this gallery or be on this publication. I think that's just the byproduct of excellence eventually as you grow. It's more so the idea of I want to be able to wake up every day and create, and have that freedom to create, whether it's drawing, painting, creating a book, a graphic novel, working on an experimental animation. Just the idea of being able to wake up every day and have, I would say, the I guess privilege or luxury of creating.
That's great.
Really. And yourself? Or I want to ask both of you.
Well, for me, it's just, getting my film into the AMC theaters. That's it. It's very simple.
One film?
Yeah, just one that I can die, then I can just keel over. That's it. Having my friends together at the premiere, with the popcorn and all that. But also, that's the end whatever. But also just working with actors, like you're saying, if I could wake up every day and work with actors and work with the character and scenes and also cinematographer and the people that are piecing it together, but mainly the actors. That's the main thing. If I could work with actors every day.
Why is that?
I don't know. I just I like working with people. Maybe as a teacher, I love trying to inspire, but maybe because I've experienced the others already. I've experienced drawing and design and storyboarding and filming to a certain degree, but I haven't really worked with actors as much. So that's kind of like the thing that I look forward to the most. And also, like with a drawing, you're forcing your line, you're making it something happen on a piece of paper. But when you're working with an actor, you give them an idea, and then they take it, and you're bringing life to your characters. I always said, as a character designer, I'd rather be a biologist if I could do gene splicing and create a real creature that could run around. That would be much better than designing it. You know what I'm saying? So, of course, I can't do that. Maybe I could. I don't know. Maybe a little dangerous. But but the idea, the other thing is to um, again bring an idea to life and allow it to leave me and create this other thing. I think it can be incredibly challenging too. Um, and when I look at great performances from actors, I'm seeing the director and the actor, and it's so overwhelming that it brings me to tears. You know, when I see these performances, and I'm like, how did they do that? You know, I want to learn that. You know, I want to be involved in that aspiration. I'll never be as good as, you know, John Cassavetes or, you know, or somebody or Martin Scorsese, but I would love to at least try to at least be in the same sandbox and at least try, you know. So anyway, so that to me is an aspiration that I feel like I'm getting closer and closer every day. So yeah.
Have you heard about stories about Cassavetes, how he would prompt his actors and kind of
Absolutely.
almost provoke them? It sounds very unorthodox and kind of a little bit. I mean, I'm thinking mainly of what Peter Falk has relayed. It sounded quite stressful as far as he wouldn't know what he was doing or why, and Cassavetes would use that confusion and disorientation to the kind of enrichment of the scene and the character, because he wouldn't have a clear motivation. So he'd just be doing his best in a almost half improvisational scene. I think it's in The Husbands, I think it is, that film, which is a fantastic film.
Absolutely.
It's incredibly strange way to approach it, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like what you're saying is like with art too, when you let yourself go, like completely let yourself go, that there's these other forces that are involved and you could create something far beyond what you even think you could possibly create. And it's setting up that environment that people can feel free and maybe off kilter a little bit. And then you have people that have these performances that other uh you know, amazing artists aspire to, like they see this as this high end thing, and it's like it just seems like such an exciting place to be in, you know. So for all of us to fantasize about, well, if I was here, oh my god, how happy I would be. And what I usually try to do is have my friends, students, everybody write it on your wall. You know, like that's, if I could do that, oh my God, you know. And then remind yourself every morning you wake up and you see it there, and it's like, am I getting closer? You know, so it really it helps you to kind of create a clear pathway, you know. And sometimes it's as easy as falling out of bed, you know. But you have to say, yes, but I'm going to fall out of bed today. You know, I'm not going to just think about it. I'm going to actually do it, you know. So anyway.
Yeah. I mean, you expressed on your episode of my podcast, I think it was either I think I had to split it into three because it was such a great, you know, long episode. And I'm yet to air Graceina's. I can't wait. It will be soon. So I'll be reaching out to you soon, Graceina, because it's I loved our conversation as well. But to John, because Graceina asked about kind of aspirations, you know, you did express a kind of hope that your filmmaking will overshadow your career as an artist and you'll be known as a filmmaker, and that this could be something which potentially could be franchisable. Is that still something you're kind of almost kind of as the dream, really, is to be able to franchise this and to let it go into the world where it can become its own offshoots and prequels and things like that?
uh, the first thing I thought of when you said that is like, I'm too old to dream anymore.
Oh,
You know
no.
what I'm saying? In other words, the dreaming is over. It's time to get to work. You know what I'm saying? So, like I mentioned before, we're getting ready to shoot the first scene. We're building the puppets. We're figuring out the mold making, the armature, and all that type of stuff. So, dreaming is over. Now it's time to get to work. You know, and I am enjoying it. I'm enjoying it incredibly. It's not like walking down the red carpet. You know, it's work. and I'm ready to get to work. So if it leads to being seen, in the theaters and stuff like that, that's amazing. But right now it's time to get to work. And to get from building a puppet to getting on in the AMC theater is an astronomical, almost incomprehensible journey. But so right now I just focused on taking that first step. So once I get that first scene shot and it looks great, then I'll celebrate. And that's the one thing I always encourage my friends and students to do is celebrate those landmarks. And once that's done, we're going to take the next step. So I can't focus on dreaming anymore. It's focused on step 1, step 2, and see where it goes.
Reality, yeah. Well,
yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned as well earlier, I don't know if you just said it now, but it's going to be stop motion.
Right. So I wanted to, not to try to plug the film, but the concept.
Please. The floor is yours.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. But it's a science fiction film that takes place, that was created in the 70s, 1970s. That's the premise. So because of that, we're only going to be using stuff that can be used prior to 1976. So no motion control, and of course no CG. So we're going to have real people in costumes, and if we need a full body creature, it'll be done in stop motion, which was how they did it back then. So I love that concept, and I know it's not like I do have a lot of things against CG, but the idea of making the film, I'm saying, like, I want to go to the set, the animators huddle over a puppet. It's more exciting than me than going to a clean room and everyone has computers and they're rendering and stuff like that, which can create beautiful results, but that's not enjoyable for me. I want to be excited, and then when the film is done, or a portion of the film is done, we have puppets, we have sets, we have specific things, tangible things that I've always wanted to have ever since I was 10 years old. So part of it is the why you want to do the film, the story or whatever, and then what life do you want to live, because that life may take 10 years. Do you want to live in a computer world or wherever you want to live? So I'm beyond words. I'm so excited. I can't wait. Once I get a hand on this puppet, and I get emotional, but it's something that I wanted ever since I was 12 years old. And once I have that, I can say I did it. And then the next step, okay, I've done that. You know what I'm saying? So you're grabbing onto these little rungs in the ladder, and no one can stop you because the rungs on the ladder are so small. It's like, oh yeah, make a puppet, no big deal. It's going to lead to this and that. So once you start aspiring to really big things, then you have to ask for lots of money and you lose control. And I don't want to lose control. So I want to just take it one rung of the ladder as I go, but also celebrate, as we go too. So
if you guys have anything to promote ever, let me know, because my channel is definitely a billboard for you guys. I'd love to help get the word out about anything that you've got coming up that you want to shout about. Is there anything that you'd like people to look at? Any kind of links for your social media, websites, print shops, anything that you've got going on? Feel free. John, you go first. What would you like people to
I would love to promote Grace's class. It's really good. Her Domestika is just fantastic. Just to be able to kind of, break down something incredibly complicated, but breaking it down to something very simple that someone can follow. I definitely want to recommend that, number one.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And then for myself, it's just my Instagram, Mahoney Artworks. I'm not posting anything about my film yet, but I think I should at least have some basic something something. So, but also Zenware. That's my a series of clothing that we're working on that also is based on the film. So just those two things I wanted to put a shout out for.
Absolutely. And Graceina, what would you like people to check out to support you and see your work?
Yeah, well, I want to return the favor now. Check out Sean's Instagram,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah.
And I think same thing as last time. Just social media, Graceina Samosir everywhere. I'm trying to document my work as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, as always, it's a great privilege to talk to both of you. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for both being
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh.
I do have a rapid fire question. Connections or skill?
Connections or skill? Which is most important?
Yes, I know it's like a false binary. You kind of have need both, but what would you say was more like in your case? What do you say? Yeah.
Well, I think if you want to find work, it's connections. If you want to wake up in the morning, look in the mirror and feel good about yourself, then it's skill. You know what I'm saying? So, but I think having both, I mean, I try to reach out to at least 10 people a day, you know? So I think having both, but the skill is more for yourself than it is for success. The terrible thing to say to young people, but um, I think human connections are the best. You know, if you can go places, go to a party or a barbecue or an art gallery and actually meet people face to face, that's infinitely more um, impactful or helpful than the internet. You know, I think the internet is great, but just getting out there, you know, you never know. Every time I go out, I meet someone really interesting. I'm like, oh, I don't really want to go, whatever. And then I go and I'm like, oh man, I'm glad I went, you know?
Yeah. It's a good mindset.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Sure, absolutely.
Nuggets of wisdom.
Amazing.
Yeah, there you go.